Hey folks, we have a computer video to do. You know how I keep promising myself that I won't change my main computer until DDR4 is a thing and is cheap and I get another board and blah blah blah. I need to stop making that promise because every time I do, I change it. So here we are with another video changing that crap around again. So as you guys know, I switched my main computer from an i7-2600 over to this APU board, mainly because of very sudden financial issues that took care of themselves fairly quickly, thanks to the selling that CPU. So luckily that's all taken care of now, and I'm not in such dire straits anymore. But yeah, since then I've been using this APU board. I've been pretty happy with it, other than a few instances. As far as it being a stable board, it's been a very stable board. I haven't had any real issues with it at all. No bad SATAs or USBs or anything like that. However, there's one issue I've always had with this board that that I'm going to try to get corrected from Gigabyte themselves, and that is the fact that graphics cards wouldn't work in this board. That they would work and you would see video and stuff, but when you get all the drivers installed and load Windows is just blue screen for no reason. I mean, that happened with AMD and Nvidia cards, so that has something to do with the board itself, and I'm not sure what. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to RMA the motherboard and probably sell the APU just to pay for what I'm about to show you. What I've done is I've gone back to this old Z68DS3 motherboard yet again, going back to 2011 yet again. This motherboard seems to be a mainstay. I just can't avoid using it. It's been so good to me over the years. The last time I tried Windows 8 on this, it didn't work too well, so I'm going to give that a shot on here. Now what I've done is, since I have the i3 in my bedside computer with that H61 board, I decided to buy an i5 for this one instead of spring for the i7. Just to keep things, a little bit more financially sound. I found an i5-2500k on eBay for $140, so I went and bought that. And that is now in the system here. I've also put the 2GB version of the 750 Ti back in here, so I'm back to using Nvidia graphics again. I came very close to selling this card actually to recoup a little cash, but I'm glad I didn't because of this whole situation. Still have the Dynatron cooler and the 16 gigs of Corsair memory, and there's the 750 gig, wow, 750 watt PC power and cooling 750 watt Mark III power supply. It's a shame they don't make these anymore because these things are beasts. And there's all the hard drives. I got 5 hard drives in there. I have 2 2TB and 3 1TB of all different makes and models. I have some Hitachi, some Western Digital, and some Samsung in there, and one Toshiba, I believe, is the 2TB. So this is the entire setup. I'm not using PCI cards anymore. I don't need FireWire in the system, and I have enough USB ports over in the new setup that's over there, which will get its own video at some point. So I know some of you guys have been wanting to see that. I'll get around to it, don't worry. But right now, I've decided to go back to this machine. Last time I tried Windows 8 on here, I did an in-place upgrade, and that seemed to present a lot of issues. So this time I'm going to try a clean install of Windows 8 Professional, and then I'm going to upgrade it to 8.1 and everything. So, yeah. The drivers are on Gigabyte's website, so hopefully I don't have too much trouble with it. And it's not an in-place upgrade this time, so should be less headaches. So I'm going to get that started. Here's the question. What am I sacrificing off of the APU board? I'm sacrificing 2 SATA ports. I'm sacrificing RAM speed. This RAM's going to be running at 1333. I'm sacrificing 2 USB 3 ports, but that's okay. I can just put a PCI card down there if I really need it. Or maybe even an X1 if I can just barely fit it in there, but I doubt I can. I'm not going to really need it anyway. It's not a big deal. Actually, I could fit it in that X8 slot down there. So yeah, I could put USB 3 in here, no problem. I'm sacrificing that, but I can fix that with a card, and that's really it. I'm not sacrificing a whole lot like I would be with the H61 board, so hopefully this works out. If not, I'll use the H61 board. But well, that Z68 motherboard thing didn't end up working out. Turns out this thing does not support Windows 8 very well. The drivers are on the website, and theoretically it should work with EFI and everything, but it doesn't. Whenever I install Windows 8, I run Windows updates once so that I can install 8.1. It freezes. Well, it doesn't freeze. No, it blue screens every time. And yeah. This board over here, which I'll be using now, the H61 motherboard, had no issues with that at all. This one does, however. This one's not really equipped for the future if you're going to use Windows 8 or 8.1 or even Windows 10. And I plan to go to Windows 10 eventually, so that's why I want Windows 8 to at least work properly on my board, because that's the type of technology that Windows 10 is going to be based off of. So, this board, not going to happen. I like this board. It's a great board for Windows 7 and Linux, but for anything beyond that, as far as Windows goes, not so much. So, yeah, unfortunate, but I'm going to be switching to the H61 motherboard. What I did for the bedside computer is I bought an identical one of these boards for that, so I'm just going to use that in that particular computer. The board I'll be using is the Gigabyte H61M S2PV. This used to be in a workshop computer, then it got moved to my bedside computer, now it's in my main computer. And an identical one of these will be going into the bedside computer, so I guess that saves me a video. So the bedside computer is not changing, I'm just buying it the same board again. The main computer, though, is being sort of downgraded to this, but upgraded at the same time. It has a BIOS that's much better than on this board. The board on this board is a little bit weird. It really is. I mean, I liked it when I bought it because it had nice features, but its BIOS is a bit strange. This BIOS is much better, much more up to date, and it's in the same sort of chipset line as Z68. You'd think the higher-end Z68 motherboard would get better support, but it doesn't, unfortunately. And I think this board is honestly a victim of timing, as far as that goes. This board is on its second revision, so you know it supports Windows 8 perfectly with no issues whatsoever. So what do I sacrifice? I only get 4 SATA ports on the A61 board. Unfortunately, on the Z68 boards, as you can see, you get 2 extras. But that's fine because I have two 2 terabyte drives in my main computer. I can just move one of the 1 terabytes into an enclosure and use it in there instead. So that's not too huge of a sacrifice. What else do I sacrifice? Pretty much all this stuff. I sacrifice a PCIe slot. I sacrifice a PCIe X16. Well, really, it's an X4 slot. So that's really not much of a sacrifice at all. I don't get a TPM module, but I don't use that. But yeah, and I sacrifice a USB header, but that's really it. I don't sacrifice a whole lot. I don't have as many USB ports, unfortunately. This has 6. Which is really nice. This has 4, so I'm gonna have to either add a bracket or a card to this machine. We'll see what fits better and fits the bill better. But I need at least 6 ports for what I do, plus the front panel and stuff. This has 4 RAM slots, so upgrading to 32 gigs wouldn't be that costly. On this, it would be because there's only 2 RAM slots. But that's okay, because 16 gigs is probably plenty for a good while, at least for the way I use computers. So, yeah. As far as I/O goes, you know, it still has serial and parallel. This one, I think you have to use, you have to use a COM header for serial instead. You only get HDMI on this one. You don't get VGA or anything like that. So it's actually nice to have DVI built into the actual board. That's really nice. And you still get parallel built in as well. I get a PS2 that splits off into 2 with this one. On the H61 board, I get real PS2 keyboard and mouse, not combined. So that's actually really nice. I like that because I'm a bit old school. So this board, for all intensive purposes, is a spiritual successor to the G41M ES2L motherboard that I've relied on so much for my Socket 775 systems. This is basically the Sandy Bridge equivalent to that as far as boards go. So it's one of those one of those sweet spots with Gigabyte. You can get budget motherboards that are some of the most stable, reliable boards in the world, whereas you can get higher end ones that tend to kind of suck. I've had that happen with both AMD and Intel boards from Gigabyte. The budget ones that are a lot like the G41M ES2L and this H61M S2PV tend to be really, really good. So I'll be using this board for a good while, I think. I don't need much expandability anymore since I have a secondary machine to handle all that stuff. So it's okay to not have a high-end board because I won't use those features. The only one that I might take advantage of is more RAM, but honestly, 16 gigs, that's probably fine for a good while. So yeah, there you have it. I'm going to be using this board, so I'm going to stick this board in that machine. The same configuration as before, except I'm going to add some USB ports in either card form or like a header bracket form, one of the two. So yeah, I'll update you guys once I get the whole thing set up. But yeah, that's what I'm going to be using now. Alright, I have the parts into the case now, and I'll just go over an overview again. I know I did it with the Z68 board, but I'll go over it again. We got the 750 watt PC Power and Cooling Mark III. And here's the board and everything all set up in there. There's the Dynatron cooler that I use on Intel CPUs. I love these Dynatron coolers. They are fantastic. 16 gigs of DDR3 1600, which will be running at 1333 since this is a Sandy Bridge chip and a Sandy Bridge chipset. There's the 2 gigabyte version of the Gigabyte 750 Ti, the GTX 750 Ti. This is one of the ones that actually does have the external connector for overclocking. Not that I'm going to overclock, but I like having the nice big cooler on there. I love these WindForce coolers. They're fantastic. I don't have any other cards besides that. I just have cables everywhere because it's a mess in here. Now, what did I do about those USB ports? I looked at my parts bin, and I actually found a USB header, which is really nice. It has 2 ports on it. I wish it had 4, but you know what? I can buy one in the future if I really need it. 2 ports is fine. There's the I/O of the graphics card, but yeah, 2 extra USB ports. So I'll use those. And I had to pull out 2 other hard drives. So here's the setup I have currently. Bottom one's a 2 terabyte Western Digital, which is partitioned in half. 1 partition's for the operating system, and 1 partition is for games. Here's another 2 terabyte drive made by Toshiba, but it has the Hitachi tooling because that's the division that Toshiba bought out. So this is one of the early ones. Actually, this is a warranty replacement one, believe it or not. But it still works, and I'm using that as a storage drive for probably video editing stuff, more than likely. And up here is a Hitachi 1 terabyte drive, and this drive has a bunch of like imported footage and stuff that I should really organize and move to the 2 terabyte because I really need to organize and just have 3 2 terabyte drives in this computer because I had like 5 hard drives in here, and that's just overkill. I don't need that. I'd rather have a bunch of really big drives than a bunch of small ones. So the drives I pulled out are on the floor over there. We'll go over those in a second. But yeah, that's what I've done to this system, and that's how it'll be running. The reason I'm using 3 hard drives instead of 4 is because I forgot that I was using a Blu-ray drive. Silly me. So yeah, it's basically forcing me to organize my files, which I really should have done years ago, but I've procrastinated that for a while because I just kind of like using my computer and not screwing with the way I organize stuff. So this is kind of forcing me to organize, which is okay. You know, I have a very stable motherboard now, a very stable build, and I'm very happy with that. This is much more stable than either the Z68 or the AMD APU board will ever be. The H61 chipset is fantastic. I had an ECS motherboard, believe it or not, with an H61 chipset for the computer in the basement. Some of you guys might remember that from a couple years ago. That board didn't have that many features, but the chipset was fantastic. I think it was a Linux box, actually, now that I remember right. So that was a good system. So I'll be going to H61 for this. The only thing I really lose out on is Intel QuickSync, but the editing program I use, Windows Live Movie Mutilator, as I call it, doesn't support that anyway, so that's fine. Plus, I have the 750 Ti. I can just use GPU rendering if I switch editing programs anyway, so that's fine. So that's the setup as it stands now. About 6 USB ports and 2 for the front USB. 3 hard drives, 1 optical drive, 16 gigs of RAM, 3.3 gigahertz Core i5-2500k. The works. We're good. So I'm going to get Windows 8.1 all going on this computer, and then I'll come back once that's all done. Oh yeah, I got to talk about the hard drives first. Hold on. These are the 2 hard drives that came out of the system. One of them is just your typical Western Digital Caviar black drive. I've had these for years. This one's from 2010. And this one is a 1 terabyte Samsung SpinPoint. Remember these drives? Remember when Seagate didn't make Samsung's drives? Those were the days, because these drives were really nice. This drive is still going strong after so many years. This drive, believe it or not, houses all the YouTube videos. Or at least a good bit of them, not all of them. A good bit of them that I've uploaded over the years. So I'm going to transfer this to the 2 terabyte drive that's in the computer already. So these are the 2 drives that have come out. For those of you curious as to what the fate of this Z68 motherboard is, I was thinking about selling it and recouping the costs, but I've decided against that. Instead, I have an AMD build in a computer in the basement. I'm going to replace that with this board. I've ordered a Celeron D530 CPU for this machine, so that'll go in here, and it'll go down the basement, and I can keep this board. So that's nice. This board is just way too nice to to sell and get out of the house. However, the AMD build is getting long in the tooth. It's got DDR2 memory. This has DDR3, and that's the main reason I'm doing that. So that's the fate of the Z68 board. So there you go. So let's get Windows going, and I'll show you the whole shebang. Well, after some toil and trouble, I finally got Windows 8.1 up and running on here. And just to reiterate, the reason I'm going with 8.1 on this machine is so I can upgrade to Windows 10 for free. So that's kind of nice. I'm still going to buy some OEM copies, but I'd like to get Windows 10 before I buy those, so that's the whole reason I'm doing this. I went through a bit of trouble with this computer. I had to reinstall Windows on here because the partition table got screwed up. First thing that went wrong is, you know how when you reinstall Windows without formatting, it just puts everything in the Windows.old folder? Well, it did that. What I didn't realize is when you upgrade to Windows 8.1, it erases everything in that folder. So I had to pull the hard drive from this machine, plug it into the secondary machine here, and recover it. That was nerve-wracking. I almost lost all my data because I was just stupid and didn't think it through. Learn from my mistakes. Move everything out of the Windows.old folder as soon as possible after you reinstall. So that was a bit of a big deal. Excuse the mess over here. I'm just, yeah, it's a mess. Anyhow, yeah, after that, after I lost my files and recovered them, the partition table got screwed up, and I think that happened because I resized it with Gparted at one point. So I ended up just reformatting the whole thing again, and currently I'm copying my video files onto there, as you can see. I already copied all my music and documents and downloads and stuff onto there as well from an external hard drive, a different external hard drive. So I reformatted the whole thing, redid the partition table, and now it works completely fine. Had no issues with it whatsoever, and it's very zippy and fast. This Core i5-2500k is excellent. And Windows 8 helps that, because Windows 8 is pretty darn quick. Just an overview of what I usually do on Windows 8. I'm using Start Menu 8, made by IOBit for the Start menu, because it's free, and it doesn't have that weird licensing system that Start 8 does. So I'll be using that, at least until Windows 10 comes out. Everything seems to work fine. Have no qualms with it at all. So I'm upgraded to Windows 8.1, and I'm ready for Windows 10 when that comes down the pike next year. So that'll be really nice. And I've downgraded to the 3 hard drives. That Samsung hard drive is what's in this enclosure, and copying all the videos and stuff off onto the 2 terabyte Toshiba that's on there. I plan to get another 2 terabyte for this system eventually, so I can have 6 on here without having to have like 5 drives and stuff, because that was insane. So that's the whole deal here with the computer. It's upgraded to Windows 8.1. It's got one of the H61 motherboards in it, and it's peppy, it's fast, it's up and running, and I'm happy with it. So I guess I should just go over this desk a little bit, since I know some of you guys wanted to see it. I've moved everything sort of... That's where my desk used to be. Well, there's still a desk there, but now everything's moved over to here. I've decided to move all my computers to this little corner. I have a little array of CDs in this giant rack here for vintage software and stuff. On this desk, I have a little rest for my wrist and Dell AT101 keyboard. Little wrist-rested mouse pad with a Microsoft wheel optical mouse USB. For audio, I'm using one of these little realistic SA-155 amplifiers connected to some Sony speakers. Can't quite remember the models on those. This little surge protector thing I got from a friend of mine, actually. And I'm using that to hold up the monitor, as well as some random junk I have here, because this... yeah, it's cluttered in this room right now because projects. I got my Samsung microphone on top of a speaker, which is probably not the smartest place for it, but it's the best I got. Got both my webcams up here. This one is for the main computer. This one's for the secondary. Yeah, by the way, I have a secondary computer. That is the old P43 socket 775 board. Has a Core 2 quad in it, 8 gigs of RAM. It's that old faithful board I used to use all the time. And it has IDE and floppy on it, so that's why I use it as a secondary machine. I primarily use it to deal with vintage computer stuff. Since that's what else I moved here. I moved all my vintage computers here. Got the Packard Bell on the bottom, the power computing right there, Gateway 2000 there, and my 98 custom build up there with a monitor and everything up here as well. Spoiler for a future video. Right there. Anyhow, yeah. That's the whole setup. Also, I have a ThinkPad sitting under there for whatever reason. So, yeah, that's the main computer. It's got Windows 8.1 and everything. Let me go to properties here. Just wait for it to focus. Yeah, there you go. 8.1 Pro, Core i5-2500k, 3.3 gigahertz, 16 gigs of RAM. Everything is ship shape. So that was definitely much needed. I think I'll be much happier with this system over the next couple years. It'll probably serve me pretty well. I don't plan to upgrade for a couple years for real this time. The only reason I did this with the APU build is because it had some quirks to it that just really got to me after a while. A system like this, it's not going to be an issue. It's just not, based on what it is. It'll be fine for the next 2 or 3 years, I'm pretty sure. So, hopefully I'm right about that. Hopefully I don't have to eat my own words like I did with the APU build. But this one I'm pretty sure is going to be good because it's a tried and true platform and setup that I've sort of used before, where it's just Intel CPU with Nvidia graphics. I've always had good luck with that. So, that is the main computer, all ship shape again. So, fun stuff. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and have a good one, everybody. Ciao.